There's a question I keep asking myself over and over again. Why do I know exactly what I need to do, yet still don't do it? I know I should wake up earlier. I know I should exercise. I know I need to study more, focus more, take my life more seriously. I know all of that. And still, I say, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow comes. And I delay again at the beginning. There's always that spark. A rush of motivation. A clear sense of determination. But a few days later, the flame softens. 3 days. A week. Sometimes a month, if I'm lucky. Then everything slips back to where it was. The problem isn't knowledge. I'm not lacking information. The problem is the environment I live in. Everything around me is designed to be easy. If I want food, it's one tap away. If I want entertainment, just open an app. If I want attention, post a picture. If I want stimulation, scroll the screen. Everything arrives instantly. No waiting. No discomfort. No long-term effort. I've lived in that comfort for so long that I stopped noticing what it's quietly done to me. I've become weaker. Not weaker in my body. Weaker in my mind. Weaker in endurance. Weaker in the ability to do what's hard when I don't want to. More than 400 years ago, there was a man who understood this human struggle better than most. Miyamoto Musashi. He fought 61 duels and lost none. Not because he was invincible. Not because he had extraordinary talent. He won because he built a discipline that didn't shake. He understood that the most important battle never happens on the battlefield. It happens in the mind, between what I want to do and what I need to do, between comfort and growth, between short-term pleasure and long-term purpose. In the Book of 5 Rings, he wrote a simple line: think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Think less of yourself. Think deeper about the world. Here's how I understand it. My ego is noise. My emotions are noise. My laziness, my fear, my craving for the easy path. All noise. When I listen to that noise too much, I lose sight of reality. I only see what I feel. And when I live by my feelings, I repeat the same cycle again and again. Today, I want to tell you a story about a 25-year-old man. His name is Jack. Not special. No advantages. No clear direction. But he had one thing in common with me. He knew he needed to change, but he couldn't do it. Before we go deeper into that story, there's something I need to make clear. This isn't meant to give me a burst of motivation that lasts only a few minutes. It's not the kind of thing you listen to, feel inspired for a moment, and then return to your old patterns a week later. I've consumed too much content like that. It sounds great. It feels powerful. But it doesn't change anything. What I want to talk about here isn't motivation. It's a system clear enough that I don't have to think too much every day. A system firm enough that my emotions can't bend it. A system repeated so consistently that it becomes the ground I stand on. Motivation comes and goes. Emotions shift with the weather, with sleep, with a single comment from someone else. But a system doesn't. A system doesn't ask whether I feel like it today. It simply requires me to show up, and that repetition builds something most of us secretly lack: consistency. Not a burst of intensity for 3 days. Not a dramatic life overhaul in a single week, but doing what needs to be done every day, even when no one is watching. I believe the difference. between the weak and the strong has nothing to do with where they start. It lies in the ability to keep going when the feelings fade. Weak act only when they feel motivated. The strong act because it is a principle. The story about Jack isn't meant to make me believe that I can do it too. It's meant to show me that when a system is applied seriously, a person can change so deeply that they barely recognize who they used to be, and that never happens in a single moment. It happens in silence. If topics like inner discipline, awareness, and self-training in the spirit of old warriors make you pause for a second, you can stay here a little longer. You can subscribe to the channel so you won't miss conversations like this. Not to collect more knowledge, but to remind yourself that you can live with more principles. Remind yourself that you can be stronger than your own emotions. You can turn on notifications so every time something new appears, it feels like a gentle reminder that the path of discipline is still waiting for you. And if you've ever tried to build discipline, if you've succeeded, or if you've failed, share that experience. Not to brag, but so those in the middle of the struggle know they aren't alone. Discipline is never built in a day. It's forged through collisions with your own self. Now, I want to return to Jack, a 25-year-old waiter, a life on repeat, a quiet discomfort, and a chance encounter that placed a simple choice in front of him. Continue living the same way, or step onto the harder path. That's where we begin. Jack was 20-5 from the outside. He looked no different from thousands of other young people. He worked as a waiter in an Italian restaurant downtown. His shifts started at noon, ended late at night. The pay was enough to get by. Nothing more. He was overweight, not dangerously so. Just enough that every time he looked in the mirror, he knew he'd let himself go. His life could be summed up in one loop. Go home, turn on the computer, play games until 1 or 2 in the morning, sleep late, wake up tired, drag himself to work, then repeat. No long-term plan, no clear goals, just drifting through the days. But inside, nothing felt settled. Back in high school, Jack used to think he'd do something bigger. His parents talked about studying, careers, building a future. He listened, but he didn't really care. His teenage years belonged to friends, parties, video games, and the kind of fun that had no finish line. He was the easygoing one, the guy who was always ready, always there. But after graduation, something began to shift. Not suddenly, slowly, quietly. His friends took different paths. One entered university, another joined a tech firm, another started a business. Jack was still carrying plates of pasta and refilling glasses of water. At first, he didn't think much of it. He told himself everyone had their own path. But the nights grew heavier. He scrolled through social media and saw graduation photos, new offices, new projects. Then he looked down at his apron and said nothing. Jack knew he needed to change. He knew he should lose weight. He knew he should learn a new skill. He knew he could pursue tech, something he once cared about. He told himself, over and over, next week, I'll start going to the gym. This weekend, I'll sign up for a coding course. Tonight, I'll sleep early. But when night came, he booted up the game. When the alarm rang, he hit snooze. When the weekend arrived, he said, maybe tomorrow. He didn't lack time. If he looked closely, he had hours each day lost to games and social media. He didn't lack information. Everything he needed was online. What he lacked was discipline. And deeper than that, purpose. He lived like someone waiting for something to happen, without knowing what he was waiting for. There were nights he stood in front of the mirror, lifted his shirt, and stared at his stomach. It wasn't just fat. It was disappointment, he wondered. What am I doing with my life? But that question was quickly drowned out by the music of another game, until one Tuesday evening, the restaurant was nearly empty. Close to closing time, Jack was wiping a table in the corner when the door opened. A man walked in, around 30, wearing a fitted grey suit, a watch catching the light in a soft, controlled way. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just a quiet steadiness. He sat at a table in the corner. Jack walked over. "Good evening. What can I get for you?" The man glanced at the menu. Black coffee. No sugar. His voice calm, almost weightless. When Jack brought the coffee out, he hesitated. His nature was curious. "First time here?" The man nodded. "Just passing through. I have a meeting in Seattle." Jack asked again, almost by instinct. "What line of work are you in?" "Technology. I own a software company." A mixture of admiration and a faint sting passed through Jack. He couldn't hide it. "Your life must be interesting." The man looked at him for a moment. "It has challenges, but I enjoy what I build." A quiet pause followed. Jack knew he should return to the counter, but he didn't move. Something about the man's calm presence made him want to ask more. "Can I ask you something personal?" The man nodded gently. "How did you get to where you are?" The question slipped out faster than Jack expected. The man didn't answer immediately. He looked at Jack as though measuring the seriousness behind the question. Then he said one word: discipline. Jack gave a small laugh, almost reflexively. "That's it." "Not just that," the man replied. "But without discipline, everything else collapses." He set down the cup. "Most people think success comes from talent, luck, or connections. Those help. But without discipline, you won't go far enough to make use of any of them." Jack fell quiet. The words hit a place he'd been avoiding. The man continued. "You look like someone with potential, but I'm guessing you haven't really used it yet." Jack didn't know what to say. "My name is Naoki," the man said, offering his hand. Jack. Their hands met. "Jack," Naoki said slowly, "do you want to know what changed my life completely?" Jack nodded. "A disciplined system built on principles that have lasted for more than 400 years. The same principles that shaped warriors who could not be broken." Jack felt his heartbeat rise. He didn't yet know that this conversation would become a turning point in his life. But he knew one thing. For the first time in years, he was truly listening, and the word discipline no longer sounded like generic advice. It sounded like a challenge. Naoki looked at Jack for a moment before speaking slowly. "The problem with our generation isn't a lack of opportunity. The problem is that we're surrounded by ease." He nodded lightly toward the phone on the table. "If you want food, you order it. If you want something to watch, you open an app. If you want to feel valued, you post a picture and wait for likes. Everything arrives instantly, and when everything is easy, you lose every reason to strengthen yourself through difficulty." Naoki leaned back in his chair. But warriors of the old world didn't live that way. Samurai weren't raised in comfort. They were shaped by discipline. Jack listened closely. Strength, Naoki said, never comes from what's easy. It comes from what's hard. And discipline is the bridge between you and that difficulty. He paused for a few seconds. I'm going to tell you the principles that changed me. Not for you to admire, for you to try. He raised one finger. The first discipline. Wake up without negotiating. The moment your alarm rings, that's the first battle of the day. If you start by negotiating with yourself, you've already lost. No thinking. No delaying. You get up. Jack remembered every time he hit the snooze button. Naoki continued. The second discipline. Act without depending on emotions. You don't need to feel ready to do what needs to be done. Emotions shift constantly. Principles don't. You act because it's the right thing, not because you're in the mood. The third discipline. Train when you don't want to. Anyone can work out on a motivated day. Real strength is built on rainy days, tired days, invisible days, the days no one sees. That's where the body and the mind grow. Jack swallowed hard. Naoki raised another finger. The fourth discipline. Remove what you don't need. The more you carry, the slower you move. Samurai carried very little, not because they were poor, but because they understood excess drags you down. Objects, apps, meaningless relationships, they all drain you. The fifth discipline. Sit with your pain. Don't run from discomfort. When you're hurt, sad, disappointed, stay still and observe. If you always escape, pain controls you. When you stay, you learn endurance. Jack realized how often he filled every empty moment with entertainment. Naoki kept going. The sixth discipline. Guard your focus like a fortress. Your attention is your most valuable asset, and modern society is built to steal it. Notifications, short videos, endless news. If you don't protect your focus, you'll never build anything with depth. The seventh discipline. Live without needing recognition. You don't train to impress anyone. You don't change to be praised. You act because it is the path you choose. If you depend on praise, you'll collapse under criticism. Then he added, the eighth discipline. Stay on the path when it gets hard. There will be days you're tired. Days you doubt everything. Days when the whole world feels against you. Those are the days that define you. You stay. You continue, quietly, without complaints. He looked straight at Jack. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Jack nodded softly. Most people can't hold even one of these for more than 3 days. Why? Jack asked. Because they were raised on ease, Naoki replied. They wait for the right feeling before acting. They look for comfort first. And when things get difficult, they take it as a sign to stop. He placed his hands on the table. Samurai saw difficulty as the forge. The harder it gets, the more you stay. There was no exaggeration in Naoki's voice, only certainty. This isn't a philosophy meant to make you feel good. It wasn't created to make you happy in the usual sense. It was created to make you strong. Jack stayed silent. Those 8 principles replayed in his mind, simple, heavy, and unavoidably direct. Waking without negotiation. Acting without emotion. Training without desire. Removing the unnecessary. Sitting with pain. Protecting attention. Letting go of recognition. Staying when it gets hard. He realized one thing. None of them were complicated. None of them were beyond his reach. But every single one required him to give up the comfort he'd been clinging to for so long. Naoki seemed to read that thought the moment it formed. You don't need to do All of this perfectly right away, he said. But you do need to begin. And you need to stop negotiating with yourself. In that moment, Jack understood his problem wasn't a lack of opportunity. It was that he had never truly stepped into what was hard. And for the first time, he allowed himself to wonder, if I tried to live by these principles, what would change? The restaurant was almost empty by then. The only sounds were the hum of the espresso machine behind the counter and a few chairs shifting quietly across the floor. Jack was still standing there. The 8 principles he had just heard no longer felt like theory. They felt like a mirror held up to his face. Naoki checked his watch. "Jack," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I have a question." Jack looked up. "Do you actually want to change? Or do you just like talking about changing?" The question stopped him cold. He'd said many times that he wanted to be different, but he'd never been forced to prove it. Naoki went on. "My company is hiring. It's not a high position, but there's a lot you can learn." Jack's heartbeat quickened. "You mean I could work there?" "Possibly," Naoki replied, "but not now." A small pause followed. "I don't hire people who only talk. I hire people who act." Jack swallowed. "What do you want me to do?" Naoki looked him over, not with judgment, but with clarity. "You say you want to change. Start with the part that's most obvious." He said it without hesitation. "You're overweight." Heat rose in Jack's face. He knew it, but hearing it spoken aloud still hurt. "Lose 8 kilos in 2 months, Naoki said. "Show me you can apply the principles I just gave you. If you do, I'll open a door for you at the company." 8 kilos. 2 months. Not a small number. Immediately, the familiar thoughts rushed in. "That's too hard. I've tried before. Work is hectic. Where will I find the time?" But he didn't say a word. Naoki seemed to read the struggle on his face. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "You're calculating whether this is realistic. But this isn't a test of your body. It's a test of your discipline." He leaned forward. "You're not losing weight for me. You're doing it to prove that you can choose what's hard and stay with it long enough. And if I fail," Jack asked quietly, "then you'll know exactly where you are," Naoki said. "And so will I." No sugar-coated promises. No motivational speeches. Just a clear condition. Naoki took out a business card, his name and title printed on the front. On the back, he wrote an email, his personal one. "I'll send you the materials. Meal plan, training plan. Some writings on discipline that I studied myself." He set the card on the table. "But I'm not going to remind you every day. I'm not going to drag you out of bed. I'm not going to run the miles for you. I'm only giving direction. You're the one who has to move." Jack picked up the card. His hand trembled slightly. "Why are you doing this for me?" he asked. Naoki looked at him longer this time. "Because 10 years ago, I stood exactly where you're standing now," he said. "Lost, undisciplined, full of excuses. Until someone placed a similar condition in front of me." He rose from his seat. "I'm simply passing forward what was once given to me." He left a bill on the table and nodded. Double quotes, "The choice is yours. Jack, you can keep living the same way. No one will stop you. Or you can start again tomorrow." He paused for a moment. "Actually, not tomorrow. Start today." Then he walked out of the restaurant. The door closed behind him. Jack stayed there for a few seconds. The restaurant was the same. The lights still warm, his shift still unfinished. But something inside him had shifted. He looked down at the business. Card. 8 kilos in 2 months. Not to look good, not to impress anyone, but to prove he could do what he said. On his way home that night, Jack didn't play music. He didn't scroll his phone. His mind held only one question. If I refuse this, my life stays the same. If I accept, I'll finally know how far I can go. When he reached his small apartment, he set his bag down, same as every night, and glanced at the gaming console. It was there, like always. But this time, he didn't turn it on. He sat at the edge of his bed, pulled out his phone, opened his email, and typed one short line, "I accept." He looked at it for a few seconds. No additions, no explanations, no excuses, just that. And he hit send. In that moment, there was no dramatic music, no rush of adrenaline, just a quiet stillness. He knew the challenge ahead would be hard. He knew there would be mornings he wanted to quit, days where exhaustion would test him, nights where doubt would whisper. But for the first time in years, he had made a decision not based on emotion, not because he felt inspired, but because he understood that if he kept living the way he had been, he would never move. That night, Jack set his alarm earlier than usual. He lay down and waited for dawn. The next morning, 5 a.m., the alarm pierced the darkness of the room. The old reflex arrived instantly. Turn it off. Sleep 10 more minutes. His body felt heavy as stone, his mind foggy, and in that moment, he understood exactly what Naoki meant. The first battle of the day, not at the gym, not at work, but between his hand and the snooze button. He lay still for a few seconds. Then the familiar voice rose inside him. "You're tired today. You can start tomorrow." But another voice surfaced right after. "Wake up," without negotiating. No arguing. No excuses. Jack sat up. Not with excitement. Not with motivation, just action. He changed into workout clothes, tied his shoes, stepped outside while the sky was still dark. Cold air touched his face. He started to run, slow, heavy, breathing hard. His body resisted every step. Each movement dragged years of laziness behind it. He wanted to stop after only a few minutes, but he remembered the third. Discipline. Train when you don't want to. He wasn't running because it felt good. He was running because he had decided. The first days were brutal. Sore muscles, aching knees, a stomach growling from a cleaner diet. Naoki sent him a detailed document, a clear meal plan, a specific training schedule, short notes explaining each principle. At the bottom, there was one line: "Don't negotiate with yourself. Just begin." Jack followed it. Morning runs, work during the day, evenings spent preparing meals instead of opening his game console. A strange emptiness appeared when he no longer drowned himself in screens. He realized how much entertainment he had used to bury his thoughts. Some nights he sat alone in the quiet of his room, tired, sore, tempted to quit. But he didn't turn on the console, didn't search for videos. To escape the discomfort, he sat with it, sat with the pain. He watched the discomfort like something happening inside him, not something to run from. A few days later, he deleted social media from his phone. No announcement, no explanation. The phone became quieter, and he found himself with more time. He used it to read, to study programming, something he always said he would learn. At first, nothing made sense. The code looked messy. Errors popped up non-stop. But he applied the same principle. Act without depending on emotions, not in the mood. He still studied, didn't understand. He stayed a little longer. Days passed, no dramatic breakthroughs. No sudden transformation, just repetition. Wake early, run, work, eat according to the plan, study, sleep, earlier. Some mornings, rain tapped against the window. He looked outside and questioned what he was doing, but he still went. Some days, customers at the restaurant were difficult. He came home exhausted, but he still trained. He didn't post progress pictures, didn't announce goals, didn't look for praise. This wasn't a public challenge. It was a private conversation between him and himself. After about 3 weeks, he felt something shift, not just in his body, but in his mind. He reacted less. He hesitated less. He wasn't living entirely by feeling anymore. A month passed. The weight continued to drop. But more importantly, the habits began to settle in. Waking early wasn't a shock anymore. Running didn't feel foreign. Routine was becoming natural. 2 months. On the final day, Jack stood on the bathroom scale. He took a deep breath. The number appeared 10 kilos down, more than the original target. He looked at himself in the mirror. His body had changed, but what caught his attention most was his eyes. They didn't avoid his reflection anymore. They didn't carry disappointment. There was a new calm there. He picked up his phone, took a photo of the result, sent it to Naoki. Only one word attached: completed. 5 minutes later, the reply came. Congratulations. Monday, 9 a.m., my office. Jack set the phone down. No cheering, no celebration. He simply sat on the edge of his bed. 2 months ago, he was a man who hit snooze every morning now. He was someone who could do what was hard and stay with it. The opportunity at the company was only the next chapter. The real change had already happened. He had stopped negotiating with himself. Monday, 9 a.m. Jack stepped into Naoki's office, entering the company at the lowest position possible. No privileges, no impressive title, just a junior assistant. But this time, he didn't care about the title. He understood that what mattered wasn't where he started. It was how he walked the path. The system stayed the same. He arrived earlier than everyone else, not to be noticed, but to give himself more time to focus. He was often the last to leave, not because anyone asked him to, but because the work wasn't finished. When he received small tasks, repetitive tasks, even boring tasks, he didn't complain. He remembered the mornings he ran in the rain. The feeling of not wanting to was no longer unfamiliar. He worked even without inspiration. There were days when projects failed. Meetings got tense. Moments when he doubted himself. But the 8th principle remained. Stay on the path when it gets hard. 6 months passed, and he was trusted with more responsibility. A year went by, and he was promoted. 3 years later, he held a key managerial role. 5 years, and he became the head of a division. 10 years after that night in the restaurant, Naoki called him into his office. "Sit," he said. The room was calm. No tension, no rush, only stillness. "I want to offer you a partnership in the company." Jack stayed silent for a few seconds, not because he was shocked, but because he remembered where he began. the apron, the small apartment, the snooze button. Naoki looked at him with quiet certainty. You've proved it every single day for 10 years. Not through words, through action. Jack shook his head gently. If it weren't for you, Naoki cut him off. I only pointed the way. You're the one who walked it. No long speech, no grand praise, just recognition for a process built on consistency. Jack understood in that moment that what changed his life wasn't a lucky break. It was the system he chose to stay loyal to. Discipline didn't make him perfect. It made him steady, and that steadiness, over time, changed everything. Looking back at the whole journey, I realized something important. Change never begins with big ambitions. It begins when you stop listening to all the noise inside yourself. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Musashi once wrote, "Think lightly of yourself. The ego always wants comfort, always wants recognition, always looks for reasons to delay, and when I treat my emotions as the center of everything, they pull me wherever they want. Ego is noise, and when the mind is full of noise, I can no longer see what I actually need to do." Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Most of us think we're making choices, but in reality, we're just repeating habits, staying up late because it's familiar, procrastinating because it's familiar, choosing what's easy because it's familiar. Then we call it personality. We call it circumstance. Discipline cuts through that loop. It pulls action out of the unconscious. It forces me to look directly at my choices. James Clear wrote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." Jack didn't change because he set a goal to lose 8 kilos. If it were just a goal, he could have quit halfway through. He changed because he built a system, waking early, training, following a plan, studying every day, not once, but over and over. The system wasn't loud, but it shaped who he became. If my life today isn't what I want it to be, maybe the problem isn't that my goals aren't big enough. Maybe I just don't have a system strong enough to carry me. There's a simple Japanese principle, kaze, small improvements every day. If I'm not in an emergency, I don't need to change everything in 1 week. I just need to start small. 10 minutes of exercise, 10 pages of reading, 1 decision not to press snooze. Consistency matters more than intensity. 3 days of extreme effort followed by quitting builds nothing. 300 quiet days of repetition build the foundation. There's another distinction that matters. Happiness and strength are not the same. Happiness is a feeling. It comes and goes. Some days I'm excited. Some days I'm drained. If I chase happiness as the highest goal, I will always chase comfort, and modern society worships that. Convenience, ease, quick pleasures, but the samurai didn't chase happiness first. They chased strength. Strength isn't rigidity. It's the ability to remain steady when emotions shift. When I'm strong, I don't collapse after a small failure. I don't lose my direction because someone criticized me. And the paradox is this: when I become strong, I discover something deeper than happiness. Peace, not the peace that comes from ease, but the peace that comes from knowing I can endure and continue. That is what discipline truly gives. Before ending this chapter, I want to remind myself of those 8 principles, not to memorize them like a checklist, but to reflect on who I am first. Wake without negotiating. The moment the alarm rings is the first test. If I win there, I set the foundation for the entire day. If I lose, I begin with surrender. Second, act without emotion. I don't wait for motivation. I do it because it needs to be done. My emotions are allowed to exist, but not to lead. Third, train when I don't want to. The days I don't want to are the days that matter most. Strength is built in resistance, not enthusiasm. Fourth, remove the unnecessary dot. Less so I can see more. Less noise, less distraction, so my energy can return to what actually matters. Fifth, sit with pain, don't run. Don't fill the emptiness with entertainment. Stay and observe, to understand that discomfort cannot destroy me. 6. Protect my focus. My attention is my most valuable asset. If I let it be fractured throughout the day, I'll never build anything with depth. Focus is a fortress, and I am its guard. 7th, seek no recognition. I don't change to be praised. I don't train to impress anyone. If I rely on the outside world to validate me, I will always be shaken. True value is built in silence. 8th, stay when it gets hard. There will be exhaustion. There will be doubt. There will be moments I want to quit, but those are the moments that define who I am. Stay quietly, without excuses. These 8 principles aren't complicated, aren't mysterious, but they move directly against the comfort I've lived with for so long, and that is why they're difficult. The final question isn't whether you understand them, you do. No one listens this far without knowing exactly what needs to be done. The question is different. Will you finish this and continue exactly as before? Or will you choose one principle, just one, and begin applying it today? No grand announcement, no life overhaul, just one small decision held long enough. The warrior's path is not loud. It only asks for honesty with yourself and the steadiness to keep going when no one is watching. The warrior's path waits for no one. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care how long you've delayed. It doesn't care how many times you've failed. It simply exists, and each day, you choose whether to step onto it or turn away. Not tomorrow, today. Not when you feel ready, but the moment you decide to stop negotiating with yourself. If what you've heard made you pause for a moment, you can stay with this channel. Subscribe, so once a week, you get a reminder about discipline and awareness. If you want, write down one principle you'll start applying today, just one. Putting it into words is already a small act of commitment to yourself. And if you want to go deeper, you can watch the next video appearing on your screen. You might find a perspective there that helps you take one step further. I'll see you in the next video, in the quiet space between 2 decisions, and in the action you choose to take.